started. So welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for June 25th, 2025. Please note the public meeting rules at the entrance. Be respectful of others' viewpoints. We aim to create a safe and open space for discourse. If you'd like to speak on a topic, please fill out a comment card and submit it to either the staff at this table or one of the commissioners on this end. And when it comes time, we can talk about it. You can talk. Comments submitted before the meeting have already been shared with commissioners and are part of the public record. Now it is time for roll call facilitated by staff.
Commissioners, when I read your name, please unmute your microphone and say here. Amy Berry.
Here.
Brian Scott.
Here.
Landon Krasik.
Here.
Mike Christensen.
Here.
Richard Leverett.
Here.
Lila Rosenfield.
Present.
Jeff Barrett.
Here.
Mike Vella.
Here.
Thank you. We have 8 in attendance.
Thank you very much. Now it is time for the report of the chair and the vice chair. Our chair, Commissioner Berry, Commissioner Burrows. Thank you. Our chair, Commissioner Burrows, couldn't make it today, so I'll be leading the meeting in her place. Other than that, I have nothing to report. Now it is time for the report of the director.
We don't have much to update on. The only thing that you might find interesting that this time of year after the budget's adopted, the council kind of goes quiet for a little bit, which is probably one well-deserved, but also good for everybody. So their next meeting is July 1, and on that meeting they will have a follow-up briefing on the MU zoning consolidation. So we'll see how that plays out, but it's possible that they could schedule that. They continued the public hearing back in May, and so they could put that on that agenda, the follow-up public hearing, and from there make a decision, possibly. So we'll see how that shakes out, but we thought that would be something that the commission would be interested in. I believe at the last meeting or prior meeting, you received a whole document or an update on various projects that are pending in the city council. So I'm not going to go over those again, but that's all we had.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Now it is time for open forum. This is the time where commissioners may discuss planning, zoning, general land use items that are not currently listed on the agenda. This discussion is limited to 10 minutes. There is no public comment with this item. Does anyone have anything to discuss? Great. Now we will move on to the consent agenda. These are items that are generally expected to need little discussion. There are 3 items on the agenda today. There is a conditional use for a bar establishment at approximately 416 East, 900 South. There is a modifications to plan development at approximately 707 South, 400 East. And there is approval of the meeting minutes, and that is for May 14th and May 28th. Outcomes from the consent agenda is commissioners may approve all items on the agenda, or they may remove one item from the agenda and put it on the regular agenda. Now we will hold public comment for the first 2 of that consent agenda. That is public comment for the bar establishment and for the plan development. So does anyone want to share a comment on either of those items? You can step to the mic. Has there been any emails? Great. Now I would look for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Very quickly, a note before. So for commissioners who were not present at the meeting, you may vote yes on the item but abstain from the meeting minutes if you were not at the meeting, and you can state the reason why you were not there. Now, thank you. So I will look for a second on that item.
I second.
Okay, perfect. Great, so now we will vote on the consent agenda. Commissioner Burrows. No, sorry, I'm so sorry. Commissioner Barry.
Yes.
Commissioner Christensen.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Leverett.
Yes.
Commissioner Barrett.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenfield.
Yes, but I abstain from the minutes because I was not present for either of the meetings under consideration.
Thank you. Commissioner Vella.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that is approved.
Landon, you
If
need to
they
vote
were
on
not-
that.
What?
You also need to vote on
Oh,
that.
yes. I will also vote yes, and I was at both meetings. If commissioners were not there, do we need to figure? No.
So if you're not at the meetings of the minutes that are up for approval, you should abstain from those minutes since you weren't there.
Okay,
I
so,
didn't do that. I thought that was a suggestion, not like, so yeah, I'll abstain from those minutes and vote yes on the two other items.
okay, perfect. And then, okay, we'll just move forward. So now time to move forward with the regular agenda. This Yeah. So we will now be moving on to the regular agenda. This is for a plan development and preliminary subdivision plat at approximately 1176 West, 1200 South. There are two case numbers associated with this item.
Sorry, we need just a moment.
Yeah, sorry, I was, yeah.
So just while Aubrey is fixing my presentation, I just wanted to explain a couple of things. First of all, this is a 2023 petition number. It has not come before you. It just had some owner changes, some architect changes, and so it is an old petition number, but it is a new item. So just wanted to throw that out.
Do you want us to just take a break for a minute, or can we just do a 5-minute hangout break, go to grab a drink from the drink fountain? So back at 5:48, please. restart the meeting. This item is plan development and preliminary subdivision plat at approximately 1176 West, 2100 South. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Diana. Nice to meet you all the new people. I want to start with our recommendation. I knew that. Thank you. I want to start with staff's recommendation. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve both applications. That would be the plan development and the preliminary subdivision plat for this project with one condition, which I will go through later. I want to familiarize you with the property and the community vicinity that it's in. The subject property is shown in yellow. This property is to the west of I-15, to the north of the 201 freeway. Redwood Road is a corridor to the west, and 1700 South is a corridor to the north. Looking at this area, it's a 5-mile perimeter radius, mostly zoned commercial corridor or general commercial, and M1, which is light industrial. There is a handful of residential dwellings or properties in this area. The subject property is marked with an X. This is a blow-up aerial of the property. The property is on 21st South. The river, the Jordan River, is to the north. And then, if you can see my cursor, there's a small little parcel to the west of the property. This is actually property owned by Salt Lake County. It's a maintenance road. It is not part of the trail system. I think there was a question from one of the commissioners regarding connection to open space for this property. At the top, again, I hope you can see my cursor, there is the new Glendale Park. The property, again, is outlined in yellow. Most of the red, so the red coming off of 17th South, which is at the top, that red line is the trail. At this point here is the only point that it crosses the river. There is a small little pedestrian bridge, and then the trail continues on, and then it kind of goes northerly, and then it comes back across another bridge, which that bridge is going over the Surplus Canal, which is the overflow for the river. And then it kind of winds down, and it comes, it continues southerly with that pink that I have at the bottom. This part of the line that I'm showing you is how the subject property would have to access the trail system and get to the park. But it's very easy. It's a minute walk to get onto that trail system. So the project request, this subject property currently consists of 2 parcels totaling approximately just a little under 6.5 acres. The proposal is for a townhome development for 163 individual lots within 22 residential buildings. All of the townhomes are proposed as 3-bedroom, 3-bath units, each with a garage for 2 vehicles. Depending on the unit floor plan, the parking in the garages will be either tandem or side-by-side parking. The townhomes have the potential for owner-occupied, to be owner-occupied because they will be under individual ownership. And I will explain that in just a moment. There is one proposed amenity building, so that's the 23rd building on the property. That is in the northwest corner of the project. This will feature a fitness center, a clubhouse, and a sales office. There will be outdoor amenities offered along the river, a swimming pool, dog park, fitness zone, seating dock. You can read the rest. There are 15 different building elevation designs, and there are 5 different unit floor plan designs. The petitions for this project are 2. There's 2 different ones. The first one is the plan development. And that is needed for 2 different modifications from 3 different ordinances. So the first one is from Ordinance 21A 36010B1. Buildings must have frontage on a public road, public street. Only 3 of the buildings in this project have frontage on 2100 South. So they need a modification for 20 of the buildings. The modification from Ordinance 21A 36010C and Subdivision Ordinance 20.26090A require a modification for 145 lots because the applicant is going to do a subdivision plat which will only put 18 lots with frontage. So the other 145 need to have this modification. And then also the preliminary subdivision plat is the second petition for this project. This is needed in order to create individual lots, individual ownership. There's just a note there that if there is a motion to approve this project tonight, the planned development must be approved before the preliminary subdivision plat. This is the overall project site plan. Like I said, 23 buildings on site, and the amenities would be to the north along the river. Most of them are to the northwest of the project. There's a couple that are at the northeast corner. This is a close-up of the access points to the project on 21st, from 21st South. The access point on the most eastern part will be a right in, left in, right out, left out. The one to the west, because there is a bridge just where that maintenance road is, just to the west of the project, they are going to be restricted from having left outs. So they can have a right in and a left in, but they can only have a right out. These are 2 types of elevations for 2 different types of buildings. Like I said, they do have 15 different types of buildings designs. These are 2 showing all 4 elevations of the flat roof building type. There will be 9 of those, there will be 11 of those on site. And then there will also be 11 of the type that have a rooftop deck, and that's shown in the rendering on the left. This is just showing kind of the location of the amenities that are outside next to the river. And then the top right one is showing the most northeast amenities. And again, based on the information and findings listed in the report, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve both applications, the planned development and the preliminary subdivision plat for this project with 1 condition of approval. And that condition of approval is that the applicant must receive permits from Salt Lake County Flood Control and the Army Corps of Engineers before development on this property can proceed. That also falls under a condition by city public utilities. So that is something that must be done. And we just added that as a precaution that it's completed before they can start the project. That's it. The applicant is here and he does have a presentation.
I'll keep this short. She covered most of the basics. We had, a conversation about.
Sorry, would you mind stating your name for the record?
Yeah, sorry. My name is Matthew Pokris. I'm with Axis Architects here on behalf of Axis Architects and the owners of the property. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll keep this short. I think she addressed, most of the things, that are worth addressing here. the few things that I guess I wanted to address were just sort of, the things that were important to us as we were designing this project. We've got 163 three-story townhome units here in the assortment of buildings that she laid out. And, there's obviously a lot going on the site here. There's a lot of units in, this space, but this is a lot that, we really believe in the development potential of, especially in terms of these residential units. Obviously, there's not a lot in terms of residential stuff that's adjacent to this, but with the proximity to the Jordan River and the adjacent golf course, and there's some restaurants and grocery shopping that isn't far, and the proximity to I-15, the proximity to the Glendale Park that's being redeveloped right now. We just think that there's a lot of potential for this is a residential development and also potentially as an anchor for other nearby residential developments. And so we wanted to, provide as much on the site as we could in terms of housing, which is, why we filled the site, to try to maximize as much as we could, also to create, units that are affordable. Obviously, the more units that we can fit on the site, the, better price point these can be offered at to, people that are, interested in moving in. But we, with that being said, we tried to create a product that's, quality, that isn't sacrificing quality for affordability. So, we've created these rooftop decks on a lot of the units. We've provided balconies in all the units, large windows, as much natural light as we can get, master bedrooms with walk-in closets, private bathrooms, in-unit garages, EV chargers for vehicles, and then we've tried to maximize the site as far as, amenity space as well. We knew that we would have, restrictions as far as how close we could build to the Jordan River. And so we, did as much as we could to sort of utilize that space around the Jordan River to provide amenities that would be useful for potential residents. So as she mentioned, things like a community garden, a playground, dog park, barbecues, fire pits, as well as, these other side amenities, the swimming pool, the clubhouse, things like that. So, we really worked hard to sort of create an overall product that's really nice. And I already sort of touched on this, but, a big part of that is just that, we feel like this is a really underutilized space that has a lot of potential for residential development. Like I said, the sort of bullet list of things that are here are things that I feel like you wouldn't necessarily, if somebody was familiar with this area and you described this, I don't know that they would necessarily draw, the sort of associations that you'd expect in terms of like the quality of a potential residential development here, with the access to public transportation, with the nearby parks, golf course, all those things. So, our goal with this is to, create a nice product for the people on the west side I-15 in this Glendale area, and to do that in a way that's, affordable for, the type of people that would be interested in townhomes like this, young families and stuff like that especially. So that's sort of all I've got. And yeah, happy to take any questions.
Can we see a rendering of the 2100 South facing side?
I'm not sure if I've got one specifically of that in here, but just pulling this up, this is sort of what we've got going on that 2100 East side, or 2100 South side, sorry.
So you don't have one. Can you pull the one up that's in the staff report so we can review it?
As there is not very many people here, I would like to open for public comment, and then we potentially can continue the discussion. Is there any emails or anything that has happened? I will close the public comment. And now we're into full discussion mode.
Is that the one that you wanted to look at?
Not the site plan, the front elevation of 2100 South, but a rendering, not the architectural drawing. And Diana, because this was a 2023 application, is it grandfathered under different plan development standards?
Regarding what standard?
The plan development, because it's a 2023, or is it following old rules?
The plan development standards haven't changed
Okay.
since then.
No.
Okay, thanks.
Is this,
Honestly, I wasn't sure. I don't remember now what's changed, what's not. done a lot.
Is it this that you wanted to see?
Yeah, I mean, I want to review the street facing side, that it's kind of the things that we've been focusing on for the street facing. So not the rest of it, but can we? I just don't want them to be a blank building. I want to review the 2100 south facing side, the renderings.
So this is not a design review, though.
I know, but I just want to see it. Please.
You would have to look, I don't know that we have, do you know what building is, like, she wants to know what building is up front. What numbers is that? Is that 1, 2? So in your staff report, oh, I don't have, in my staff report, I don't have the elevations. It would be in the plans, in the elevations, it would be building number 2. You could look at that.
That was one of the things when I was looking, there was a ton of side elevations. And
There is
one or
so-
two front elevations, but I didn't know what buildings we were looking at.
Yeah, it would be number 2 and 3 that would be right on 21st. And those would be, there would be a north, south, east, and west elevation that you should be able to look at in your staff report.
So tell me for, I don't know how to word this. So when you're doing the proposal, are you, how did you review to what standards for the 2100 south facing side? Because
So
it
they
looked
have
fairly
to, they do have to
benign.
meet the development standards. So depending on the zone, so this is a CG, so if whatever
Oh, that's
standards are in the CG.
Oh, that's a horrible zone. Okay, that's why. That explains things. Okay, thank
So
you.
that is what they have to meet, is the design standards for the CG.
I remember reading that thinking, oh, that's, okay, now I'm good on that. Thank
Okay,
you.
good.
That is not my favorite zone.
Quick question. So I was looking over the plan set and I noticed the back path that's closest to the Jordan River, it's labeled as a mulch path. I'm wondering, sort of on the east end, when it becomes parallel to the roadway and goes past the dog park and behind that easternmost building, does it become asphalt or is it mulched all the way out?
So the reason that it is a mulch path, we originally designed it to be an asphalt or a concrete path all the way around, but it moved, it moved into an area that was close enough to the river that we couldn't have a concrete or an asphalt path. So it got changed to a mulch path, which, is considered acceptable within that area, just for the parts of the path that are within, I think it's the 25-foot setback or a 50-foot setback from the Jordan River on that north side. So it transitions into a mulch path. I can't remember, I'm looking at this, I can't see exactly, but I want to say that it remains a mulch path until it sort of, terminates on that east end.
Thank you.
So one question that I have, and I apologize if this is obvious to everyone but me, but so the reason you're here, a lot of it stems from the fact that parcels and buildings are not on public roads. Are there any, how does the city think about, and how does staff think about, I mean, these could conceivably become public roads and then the issues would be solved for, all the new parcels would be on public roads. How does staff think about that?
Are you talking about the roads inside the project?
Yeah, the roads inside the project.
So they won't, because they most likely won't become public roads because they don't meet the standards, the roadway standards. There is standards for size, width, fire,
and so if they,
to meet public right of way.
so if they were public road, but say they did, I mean, it's just an interesting question. Does this type of thing ever occur where for a site like this, the city would add to its stable of public roads, public right-of-ways, or is that just never a consideration? Because it would solve for the problem that we're here to give approval for.
It would, I agree. However, these are private, it's private property, private project. So as long as they meet the requirements of the fire department, they're private. And so we just go with that.
So I can add some context to that too. The plan development regulations also state that if someone's proposing a substandard public street, they have to do that through a plan development anyway. So it would come back, and that's precisely for us to make sure that we can get all of the necessary stuff that has to be included in a public right-of-way. Make sure there's the width, the space, things like that. Because once they do that, they open up like street tree requirements, street lighting requirements, ADA, all of those kinds of things. And so it's a different conversation. But
If there's nothing else, I'm willing to make a motion.
No, I've got more questions.
Go ahead.
Or I'm not sure how much I can frame this as a question, but I do have some concerns. The thing that stood out to me when reviewing this proposal was a discussion of mobility, and I can look up the specific term. A quote, so the West Side Master Plan, with which this needs to, or that this project would need to support, says that that it should support a transportation and mobility network that is safe, accessible, reliable, affordable, and sustainable, providing real choices and connecting people with places. Frankly, I look at this project and I see a project that is quite closed off. Obviously, like to the west, you're facing the Jordan River. I am a little bit curious about that utility road and the possibility of working with Parks to link in, because right now what you would have to do in order to access the Jordan River Trail is walk all the way out to the main Strode, right, the 21st South road face, which is not a comfortable or pleasant street. Walk across a bridge, which is just looked at it as Google Street View. It's not particularly comfortable, and then walk all the way back. Likewise, to access the public bus.
I don't want to disagree with you out of respect. However, it is a very short walk to the trail entrance. And they will probably never be able to get access across that Salt Lake County point because it is a maintenance road that the county is probably not going to give them an easement to. I did talk to Salt Lake County Real Estate Monday, and that's probably not going to be an access point at all. They will probably have to go on to 21st and then get onto the trail at that point, which is not a bad thing. I think it's a pretty easy access point. Does that?
I mean, I think that clarifies it a little bit, but I'm.
So I do it as a citizen. I ride that trail all the time on my bike,
Yeah.
and I have to do that. So the residents here are like within very close proximity to this trail, and they will just be able to get onto the trail much
makes
easier.
sense. And in terms of like eastward access, if the proper parcel to the east were to redevelop in some way, there would be no way to connect between the new private streets and that via that proposed sidewalk, or would there be a way to?
There is sidewalk on 21st, so they can get to the property to the east. I mean, this is a private development, so there's no requirement that they interconnect. These roadways inside this project are private to this development, so the connection to the property to the east is not required.
I guess I would question in terms of requirements, right? Like ultimately we are approving this as a plan that has to be compliant with certain standards and certain values that the city has embodied in the code and our various plans. Correct?
Correct. So can I put it in a different perspective for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in this zone, in this CG zone right now, they're allowed up to 75 feet tall.
Yeah.
So if they put in 2 big buildings on 21st South that were 75 feet tall with if they can get 163 units in there, they wouldn't be here. They wouldn't need this process. So they could do that without your approval. So this way, they're just putting the density at a lower height all about the property. Does that help at all? Like,
I mean, I'm not worried about the density. I'm thrilled to hear that these are potentially going to be able to be for sale units. I am thrilled to hear that they're going to be family-sized units. Like, all of that sounds great to me. But thinking about the future, thinking towards a future in which this area turns over, I'm worried about creating the kind of facilities that you see, the kind of planned developments that you see, frankly, further south in the valley, where there are these like basically enclaves that don't reflect what I think the value of Salt Lake is, which is that all of our communities are connected. You're not talking about like one HOA where everybody lives in that HOA, and to get anywhere out of there, you have to either drive or walk along, again, an unpleasant street front, although I have also walked along 21st. That doesn't seem to me necessarily to comply with the spirit of what is being said in the West Side Master Plan about transportation and mobility.
I hear what you're saying about you want there to be an equitable communities and equitable access. And part of the purview of the commission is that we really are kind of held in this administrative role where we have to really hold stuff to the design standards. So if there's something that you're seeing that is in one of those line items at the bottom that you can make an argument for, then there's a further conversation that could happen. But outside of that, there's kind of a space where the city council gets to be a little more squishy with their these are our aspirations, and we really have to hold strong to what the line is. So I'm going to jump to Leverett really quick because he had something. But if you want to think about something or try to find something, that would be great. But I'm going to jump to Commissioner Leverett, who wanted to talk earlier.
All right. I definitely want to echo a lot of those concerns as well. But what I want to frame here is, pull up what I'm looking at. And going through the notes and procedures of what we're looking at, I saw the notes about public access roads and fire plan, the fire access roads. Do these plans reflect commentary from the fire department, or are those items listed a contingent condition on it as well? Because it's listed as, here's what the fire department requires.
correct.
But are those reflected in the current drawings, or does it not move forward unless it reflects that later?
Kind of both. So the fire department was routed these plans, and they have seen it, and they have given approval specifically to the applicant. When and if this is approved and it goes for building permit, there's kind of a check and balance between planning, fire, and other agencies that review the building permits, and they will have to meet it. They will have to meet all requirements.
Okay, so the plans we're looking at right now aren't reflective of potential requirements that would be added in later.
The fire department typically gives an overview. I think that they work pretty close with the applicant specifically in making any changes that need to be done. But in my report, they do just give kind of the basics of what's required. But the applicant has received very specific, if there was any changes that needed to be made through the fire department for safety purposes. And again, that review will go back through the building permit process with the fire department. So it will be checked.
Okay, so maybe this question isn't answered here, but it's another procedural question later. But 2 meetings ago, we changed a lot of language within the code to sort of eliminate the site plan review piece and go with this more of a concentrated approach for the planning department. But it sounds like those steps are still there, just not reflected in this piece here now. Is that correct, Nick? or?
So yeah, all of those steps with those changes that you talked about a couple meetings ago or last meeting, they're still in our code. They're still required. Our current code that we're proposing to change actually didn't follow what the best practice was as far as getting department reviews and correlating plans and comments so that all of the code, zoning, fire, building, public utilities, are all met. The plan development process has a modification process so that if there is a technical code like the fire code that can't be met, we have some ability at the staff level to modify the approval to accommodate that. If it's outside of what we're allowed to do, it comes back to the Planning Commission. So there is a process to rectify any sort of conflicting comments, or if there's a major comment, like, one of the fire department comments is about their turnarounds within the site. So if it turns out that when they submit their building permit and they just don't meet that turnaround requirement, they're going to have to modify their plans, which may mean coming back to the Planning Commission to get a modification if it's something we can't approve at a staff level. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm thinking about and also concerned about from a fire code standpoint, and being so close to the floodplain. The load bearing of the non-public streets here wouldn't meet requirements for fire equipment to get down those streets, being able to turn around on those streets and those kind of things, adding the modifications later, which I think all is very technical, but it all leads to the livability of spaces, because when you're in the inside of one of these developments, there's 20 feet of asphalt between you and another unit. There's an idling car, there's 2 parking spots, and it gets hot here, right? And how that affects things later on with changing lanes and shifting things around really affects the livability for that. So if we approve something without frontage now, they might get squeezed in later on because of some modifications, and we're too late down the path because it's not enough room anywhere, because you have to now change the boundaries and change the edges to make room for the 2 fire lanes. So lots get squeezed, tighter spaces, becomes harder to live in those little spots. And so that's what I was thinking about in that space. But I don't know if we have requirements for that now, and it's not reflected, like it doesn't reflect the fire plans now. So I don't know if this outer road needs to be an additional 5 feet or load bearing, but then would change all the houses in there, which would change what I'm looking at, I guess.
Yeah, so the commission would have the authority to add conditions to address situations like that. So if there is like a fire code that can't be met, that requires changes, you can require that to come back to you as a condition, so you can consider how it impacts the overall livability, like you said, of the site. I would just ask that it's tied to one of the standards of approval. There is a connectivity standard which seems to address that, but that would be my ask. That makes it a lot easier for us to know and have some guidance on what to bring back if that's what the commission prefers.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of making a motion that adds another condition beyond county and U.S. Army Corps standards, but I don't want to get into a situation where we're stuck down the line and now we're working with a developer who has come back to the table with something that we have no choice but to approve, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and because it's a plan development, the Planning Commission does have pretty broad discretion.
Right.
So let's say somebody comes back and they're like, hey, we can't meet turnaround, so we have to modify our site plan. This is how we're going to do it. If the commission doesn't like it, you can say, this proposal isn't going to work. It doesn't meet our original intent with your approval. You need to come up with something else. So you do have some pretty broad discretion. You don't, in fact, you don't need to accept any plan development if you don't feel like it meets the objectives or the standards.
Right.
You don't need to apply conditions if you just think it's not going to work.
Right. I'm thinking if we're going to move the needle, let's move it now and not in 9 months or something, That's just what I'm thinking, but I'll think about a motion, but I don't think I have one now that would affect that. So
Just
maybe it's aspirational.
Just a kind of question, in your guys' experience as staff, has the width of streets changed? How often does the width of streets change after it comes through us for a design review because of fire or something?
You know, with some regularity. Usually what happens is that they need to add asphalt or put restrictions on what can happen within that. We don't see a lot of planned developments that are necessarily this size with this housing type. This is kind of an anomaly. But oftentimes we'll get like the infill development where maybe it's 5 or 6 townhomes and they end up being 180 feet deep. They need to provide a turnaround. And so what they'll end up doing is either, moving the distance between, splitting the building or moving the distance. Sometimes they'll have to restrict what can happen in that right of way. Like they'll have to put no parking signs and things like that. Those are all things that we typically work out at a staff level based on the commission's approval. If it's something where we can't make it work, that's when we come back for oftentimes. So I'm not going to say that it happens a lot just because we don't see a lot of this type of plan development, but it happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had 3 questions, and you asked one of the ones that I had, but I'm still concerned about fire truck access, the turning radiuses. If I'm reading the plans right, it looks like there's no dead ends, so they can filter through and stuff. But turning radiuses, I think that'll be taken care of when they get to the fire guys. They'll let loose on that. So fire access was one. I guess I'm a little bit concerned. I'm not seeing any, with the number of units, you've got 163, you've got, 3 bedrooms. Parking seems to be just kind of an issue. And is there any visitor parking here? Because, if you just do the math, there would be like 489 residents here. And I'm not seeing, unless I'm just not seeing the, visitor parking at all in through the site. Has that been accounted for, and is that something
There is. So they are showing 2 cars per townhome.
Right.
And then there is 21 randomly throughout the project.
Okay.
Matthew, do you want to point them out?
So I guess just a dumb math
It's going to be
question.
hard for you to see with the cursor, but he can point out the random parking within the property.
In the
Yeah,
staff
so
report,
we've got some up here. If you can see the cursor, we've got some more down here and some more over here. Some visitor spots there. It's a little tough to.
Okay. And
Yeah, we've got some more over here. So yeah, we've tried to distribute, some visitor parking spots throughout, here and there, assuming that residents will rely on the parking that's available within their units, and then hopefully providing enough visitor parking spaces that, as people are coming and going, there's enough to take care of them. So.
all right, I'm assuming that staff knows all of these numbers, and they're
Yes, they are meeting the parking
then
requirement.
I'll leave it alone. It just seems to be a little stilted, and there can be 489 residents, but there's only 326 parking spaces, plus the 21 seems to be a little bit of an imbalance there. But I'll leave that alone. And I guess the third thing I was questioning is, I'm assuming that all of the green space, the landscaping requirements, the percentages on the site have been met, because it
Correct.
looks like it's
Yes.
pretty dense.
Correct. So the main one that they have is on 2100 South. They have to meet a tree requirement. Throughout the project they don't have any kind of landscaping buffer requirement, but they are proposing quite a bit of landscaping throughout the project. So they are meeting that.
Along 2100.
2100 is their main requirement, yes, for the trees.
Fair enough. Thank you.
If I may. So with regard to specific issues, Section E of our considerations is mobility. The proposed plan development supports citywide transportation goals and promotes safe and efficient circulation within the site and surrounding neighborhood. And we should consider, among other things, number 2, whether the site design considers safe circulations for a range of transportation options. And then option C is minimizing conflicts between different transportation modes. And then number 3, whether the site design of the proposed development promotes or enables access to adjacent uses and amenities. Again, I have some concerns that there are not as many alternatives to automobility as I would like to see in a project of this scope.
So are you looking only at vehicular? Because there's bike ability, there's pedestrian walkability to get to these other businesses and services that are within the area. There are sidewalks all along 21st on both sides of this street. So I think if you're only looking at the vehicular connection, no, that's probably not going to happen. But there is public transportation. There's a bus route that goes up 21st. And again, bikes, scooters, walking, that's definitely available.
All of which would need to go out to 21st, correct?
Right. They have to go out to 21st to get out of this project. So yes.
Right. I want to echo that sentiment again. I think that I want to feel like this is walkable, but because there are no breaks between the buildings, being where you are, you might have to walk around the entire, I don't know, maybe 15 units or so at certain times to get around and out of the development. And I think that's what makes it feel less walkable and less accessible to 2100 or another street. I think there's one break here, but having multiple breaks between buildings or dividing up the buildings more would give more.
Again, this isn't a design review. So they are meeting the standards. There are pathways, there's roadways they can get through the project. I think you're going a little too specific in design.
I'm saying, I'm not, this won't be reflected in emotion at all. I'm saying from a walkability standpoint, a visibility standpoint, this is how it feels. It feels like I want this to be a planned development and it's a lot of density and it's really walkable and urban. But from looking at it, I'm like, ooh, this doesn't make me feel comfortable. And that's what I'm saying because of those pieces there. Not something that's within our powers, but saying it just doesn't feel or look walkable in that way.
They are meeting the standards of the planned development.
Just a kind of question that might help a little bit with this whole discussion. I know transportation was talking about making some multimodal improvements to 2100 South. They did some community engagement about it about a year ago. Do you guys happen to know if there's any progress with that? I understand it's a different department, so it may not be something you know about, but if they are making improvements, multimodal improvements to 2100 South, it may help with some of the concerns that some of these commissioners are talking about of connecting to the broader community.
I think we'll look that up real quick to see what the status of those are. But I did want to touch a little bit. The commission gets to ultimately decide where the standards are met, right? And so if there is a standard, like you mentioned the mobility standards, if you don't feel like they are met as proposed, you can require changes. You can ask them to come back with something. You can put conditions on something like making sure that there's pedestrian access through the site to 2100 South. I think where it might be a little bit problematic is if you try to require it to adjacent properties through their property. Because one, we may not be able to require that next door property to do the same. They may develop in a way that doesn't require any sort of coming to the commission or things like that. So I think that's up to the commission to decide if you feel like there are improvements that could be made to better satisfy that mobility standard than what is currently proposed.
Would it be in line to ask that northeast pathway that seems to extend to the property line be maybe widened into a multi-use path for that section so that both bicyclists and pedestrians would be able to pass through there in the event that the adjacent property develops?
The problem is that we can't enforce the other property to develop, to make a connection there. So we could, if we tried to get them to do that and then that doesn't happen, then we didn't do anything. Like we created something that was a dead end that then cost more, that didn't actually create more connections and create more multimodal access. So you could make that recommendation. You could suggest something like that. And then it would be up to other commissioners to try to figure out whether that was going to work for them. Whether other commissioners felt like the standard was being met.
I would point out, looking at the site plan, that it appears that that path pretty much extends to the property line.
Do we know the width?
I believe that path, so I just pulled up our landscape plan to look at really quick here, and yeah, so that path does turn back into pavement, sort of in this area on the north side of that building 7, and I believe that's a 5-foot wide path that then goes east and wraps around the east side of this building on the far east side of the property. So that wraps around there and then comes all the way down the side of that property right now. So that's a 5-foot path that has connection from all of those units and connects with the sidewalk then on 2100 South.
Let's go back this. So the modification requested is about the number of proposed buildings that have public street frontage or not. But if the buildings were smaller and had more egress for the entire unit, there would be more buildings with public frontage. Maybe going from 3 to 6, depending on how it's divided up. I don't think I'm in the best position to say where to divide it up at. But that would be within the realm to say, if the buildings were smaller and had more access to people or split up, the buildings along the public street frontage were split up to where more people in the middle had access to the street without going around the building, then that would modify how many buildings of the total percentage, how many buildings of proposed buildings in total had public street frontage, correct? So we would go from, in theory, we would go from proposed 23 buildings to proposed maybe 25 or 6 buildings, and there would be splits on those public street frontages, right? So more buildings would have access, but also it would have the egress to the streets. Does that make sense?
It does, and I hear what you're saying, and I understand some of these concerns, but one of the first things I did when I looked at this plan was look at the distance between the 2 access points to the site. It's 370 feet, and in Salt Lake City, we have 660-foot blocks, right? You can't walk through the block, it's all private property. That's what we're accustomed to in this town. In neighborhoods like mine, where the blocks are a little bit smaller, they're about this 370. So there is a division between the 2 buildings on the street. So it's much more pedestrian friendly than downtown Salt Lake City from that perspective. None of these buildings are longer than a city block or even a half a city block. So I don't share the concern that the buildings are too monolithic to allow for a pedestrian scale, a pedestrian friendly movement around the site or access to the road.
If there is any other comments, we'd love to hear them. Otherwise, I would be looking for a motion. So if anyone has a motion, we also can keep the discussion if others feel like there's important things we need to talk about, but just kind of putting it out there.
I'm willing to make a motion. So this would be for PLN PCM 2023-00567, the Jordan River Flats Plan Development. Based on the information presented in discussion, I will move that the commission approve this plan development application as recommended with conditions listed in the staff report.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion of this motion?
I am not comfortable voting yes on this motion, given the concerns that I've raised regarding mobility. I would be happy to discuss further, but given that the motion is on the table, I will be voting no if we proceed with the vote as motioned.
Thank you. Okay, well, we have a motion and we...
For clarification on the motion, as listed in the staff report, we're talking, the conditions would be Salt Lake County Flood Control and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Correct.
And regardless of, but I think fire still applies and everything else still applies.
Correct.
Okay, so we're going with
Absolutely.
these listed: Flood Control, Army Corps, and regular processes.
Correct.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There is, this is my first time fully running a meeting, so just to make sure that I'm doing process right, I would like to kind of lean towards the staff. So there's the possibility of an amendment. So someone could say, I would like to try to amend, or what is the chair's responsibility to allow even discourse and even access to the motion? If somebody's quicker on I don't know. Help me just like fully actuate this moment.
You want to take it?
Go ahead.
I'm a little rusty, but if a substitute motion is made, that becomes the motion on the table and is the active motion until there is a conclusion on that motion by vote, or another substitute motion is made, and then we, hopefully we don't play that kind of a game for a while, but a substitute motion would be the prevailing motion.
And anybody can suggest an amendment that the person who has made the motion can accept or
That is
reject.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so one could ask to make an amendment, or one could suggest a substitute motion, and then we proceed from there if we want to. I mean, we have to, but yeah. So
Well, we have a second, so.
we have a second. So
So once it's been seconded, we have to vote. We cannot do a substitute motion?
no.
You can do a substitute motion or an amended motion after somebody has seconded it.
Yes.
That's the proper time to do it.
Okay.
So if you want to make a substitute motion, then that motion goes up. We vote whether we want to accept that. You ask for a second, and then if somebody seconds you, then that's the motion on the table. Otherwise, if no one seconds you, then it reverts back to this motion, which then we all vote on.
And is there the difference between a substitute motion and a motion to amend is that the motion to amend has to be accepted by the original person. Okay. Thank you.
It doesn't have to be as formal as a motion to amend. It can just be a request for a friendly acceptance of an amendment.
Okay.
Okay, so if there is no, we are moving forward with Amy's motion. Just for me, will you please restate the wording of your motion so we can proceed clearly?
Yes, so for PLN PCM 2023-00567, Jordan River Flats Plan Development, based on the information presented in discussion, I move that the commission approve this plan development application as recommended by staff with conditions listed in the staff report.
Okay, and then We already had a second. Now we're going to take it to vote. We are going to start with Commissioner Vela. Sorry, Commissioner Vela. Aye. Commissioner Rosenfield.
No.
Commissioner Barrett.
Aye.
Commissioner Leverett.
Aye.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Christensen.
Yes.
Commissioner Barry.
Yes.
I will vote yes. That passes 7-1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 8-1. 7-1. Yes, thank you.
I'm willing to make the next motion.
Yes, please do.
So this would be for PLN SUB 2024-01069, Jordan River Flats preliminary subdivision plat. Based on the information presented and discussion, I move that the commission approve this preliminary subdivision plat application as recommended by staff with conditions listed in the staff report.
I'll second that.
We will move to a vote. Commissioner Leverett.
Actually, as a procedure, you should ask if there's any discussion to the motion.
Is there any discussion to the second motion?
I will be voting yes on this one because ultimately I think there is a great value in owner-occupied units. So despite my concerns regarding the project, I am happy to support the motion for subdivision.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to vote Commissioner Leverett.
Yes.
Commissioner Barrett.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Vela.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Christensen.
Yes.
Commissioner Barry.
Yes.
And I will vote yes, and that is 8-0, and it passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That is the end of the meeting. We will adjourn.